INFJs are often seen as quiet, thoughtful people. They observe more than they speak, feel more than they show, and understand more than they explain. Underneath that calm surface is something much bigger, a set of powerful traits that most people don't see. These traits are what some might call superpowers. Things like deep intuition, emotional insight, powerful empathy, and the ability to sense people's motives without words. But here's the strange part. Many INFJs don't use these gifts the way they could. In fact, they often push them down, not because they don't have them, but because they've learned, over time, to hide them. And the hard truth is, they usually don't even realize they're doing it. This doesn't happen out of weakness. It comes from experience. Many INFJs grew up being told they were too sensitive, too intense, or too quiet. They may have been misunderstood or made to feel strange for seeing things others couldn't. Over time, they started to doubt themselves. They held back to fit in, to avoid judgment, to keep the peace. This video is about uncovering the 6 reasons why INFJs hold back their natural strengths without knowing it. These aren't just habits. They're coping tools that started as survival. But when left unchecked, they can limit the INFJ's full potential. If you've ever felt like there's more inside you than you let out, or if you've sensed that you're not showing the world the real depth you carry, this may help explain why. And more importantly, it may help you take that power back. Because INFJs aren't meant to stay small. Their insights, their heart, their wisdom, it's all needed. The world doesn't just need their kindness. It needs their full strength. Reason number 1. Fear of misunderstanding. One of the biggest reasons INFJs suppress their natural gifts is fear of being misunderstood. This fear often begins early. As children or teens, many INFJs notice they thought differently from the people around them. While others might focus on facts or surface topics, INFJs were thinking about emotions, purpose, meaning, and what's going on beneath the surface. They often asked deeper questions, noticed contradictions, or sensed when something wasn't right, even if no one said it out loud. But instead of being welcomed, these moments often made them feel isolated. They might have been told they were imagining things, being dramatic, or reading too much into something. Maybe they were called weird, sensitive, or hard to understand. And slowly, they learned a painful lesson. When you show your deeper side, people might not get it. And worse, they might turn against you for it. So they started to hold back. Not all at once, but piece by piece. They kept their insights to themselves. They stopped pointing out the deeper truths they could see. They went quiet when things didn't feel right, instead of speaking up. Over time, it became automatic. They didn't even realize they were doing it. The fear of being misunderstood didn't just apply to people. They started doubting their own thoughts. They might have a strong intuitive feeling, but instead of trusting it, they second-guess. What if I'm wrong? What if no one believes me? What if I speak up and people think I'm crazy? This habit of holding back becomes a kind of protection. INFJs don't want to be judged. They don't want to be rejected for something they didn't choose, something that just comes naturally to them. And so they stay in safe conversations. They act like they don't see what they see. They listen instead of lead, all while their deeper mind is working in the background, catching things no one else sees. Even in adult life, this fear doesn't always go away. In work settings, INFJs might hold back a creative idea or an observation about the team dynamic because they fear it will be misunderstood or ignored. In relationships, they might hide how deeply they feel because they're worried about overwhelming the other person. In social situations, they might pretend to be more simple than they are, just to make others comfortable. What's lost in all of this is the INFJs. On INFJ's true side, when they hold back who they are, they miss chances to lead, to heal, to help, or to create real change. Their superpowers stay hidden, not because they're not there, but because fear taught them that showing them was dangerous. The irony is, people often sense there's something powerful about an INFJ. Even when they're not saying much, their presence feels strong. But if the INFJ is afraid of being seen fully, they'll continue shrinking in order to fit what feels safe. It's not easy to unlearn that fear. It takes time, trust, and the right people. But recognizing the fear is the first step. Once INFJs start seeing how much they're holding back, they can begin choosing when and how to show more of their true self, not for approval, but because that's when they're strongest. Reason number 2, overwhelming empathy. Another reason INFJs push down their gifts is that their empathy can become too much to carry. INFJs don't just understand other people's emotions, they feel them. If someone is upset, the INFJ feels that pain like it's their own. If someone is excited, the INFJ feels the joy ripple through their body. This ability is powerful. It helps them connect, support, and truly understand others in ways most people can't. But it also has a cost. Being this open to the feelings of others can leave them emotionally exhausted. In a single day, they might absorb stress from a coworker, sadness from a friend, anxiety from a family member, and still try to stay balanced. That kind of emotional load is hard to carry, especially when most people don't even realize the INFJ is doing it. Over time, many INFJs learn to suppress their empathy, not because they want to, but because they have to. They start turning it down like a volume knob. They avoid emotional conversations. They stay away from crowds. They stop watching certain shows or reading certain books because even fiction can become too real for them. These are small ways of protecting themselves from becoming overwhelmed. But in doing this, they also lose part of what makes them strong. That empathy is one of their core gifts. It's how they guide people, how they sense what's needed, how they create change. When they push it down, they may feel more in control, but they also feel less like themselves. This suppression also shows up in how they treat their own emotions. INFJs, who are overwhelmed by others' feelings, may start numbing their own. They stay busy to avoid thinking. They avoid conflict to stay emotionally safe. They might even laugh things off just to keep the peace. The problem is, emotions don't disappear just because they're ignored. They build up. And when INFJs stop using their emotional insight because they're afraid of what they'll feel, they disconnect from the very part of them that makes them wise. The goal isn't to turn empathy off, it's to learn how to manage it. That means taking time alone to recharge. It means choosing who to be open with and who to step back from. It means learning that protecting yourself doesn't mean closing off. It means staying open in the right ways. When INFJs learn to work with their empathy instead of running from it, everything changes. Their connections become deeper, not draining. Their insights become sharper, not scattered. And they start using their gift of empathy as the strength it's meant to be, not as a weight they have to carry alone. Reason number 3, perfectionism and self-doubt. INFJ are known for their thoughtful nature, and that depth often extends inward. They reflect deeply, not only on the world around them, but on their own actions, thoughts, and decisions. While this self-awareness is powerful, it can also lead them into perfectionism and self-doubt. These two forces, though different, often work together to keep INFJs from using their natural gifts fully. Perfectionism in the INFJ doesn't always look like obsessing over small details. Sometimes it looks like not starting at all. They have a vision of how something should be, and if they're not sure they can reach that level, they hesitate to even try. This shows up in creative work, relationships, leadership, or even everyday decisions. Instead of risking something that feels incomplete or imperfect, they stay silent. They delay. They hold back. And behind that perfectionism is often self-doubt. INFJs tend to hold themselves to much higher standards than they hold others to. They don't want to just be helpful. They want to be perfect in how they help. They don't want to just speak. They want every word to matter. So when they look at their own abilities, they often focus more on what's missing than what's already there. This mindset causes them to downplay their talents. Even when others tell them they're gifted or insightful, they brush it off. They assume they're just being polite, or they think, if only they knew how unsure I really am. The truth is, INFJs can be extremely capable and still feel like they're not doing enough. And this quiet doubt keeps them from stepping into roles where their gifts could shine. In group settings, INFJs often sense things others don't. They might see a deeper solution, spot a hidden problem, or have an idea no one else has thought of. But if they're stuck in self-doubt, they won't speak up. They'll wait. They'll tell themselves someone else can do it better. And while they're waiting for perfect, the moment passes. The same thing happens in relationships. INFJs can feel deeply connected to someone, but second-guess whether they're expressing it the right way. They want every gesture, every conversation, every moment to match their inner ideal. And when it doesn't, they start to question whether they're enough. All of this holds back their superpowers, their creativity, their insight, their intuition. These are not tools that need to be perfect. They need to be used. But INFJs often don't believe their gifts count unless they look flawless. So they hide them. The way out of this is not to aim lower. It's to accept that being human is messy, that sharing a powerful idea, even if it's not polished, still matters, that being present and real in a relationship is more powerful than chasing an ideal that no one can meet. When INFJs begin to trust that real is more important than perfect, they unlock a part of themselves that was always there, waiting to be used. Reason number 4, desire for harmony. INFJs care deeply about peace. They feel tension quickly, even before it's spoken. They notice when someone's tone changes, when energy shifts in a room, or when a conversation turns cold. Because of this sensitivity, they often take on the role of peacemaker, smoothing things over, softening edges, avoiding conflict. But this strong desire for harmony can come at a cost. Sometimes, it leads them to silence their own voice, even when they have something important to say. This usually starts with good intentions. INFJs don't want to hurt anyone. They don't want to cause waves. So when something feels off, they pause instead of pushing back. If they disagree, they often keep it to themselves. If someone is rude, they might make excuses for them. If someone is in the wrong, they might give them the benefit of the doubt, even when it's not deserved. What they don't always realize is that this constant filtering, this quiet editing of themselves to avoid discomfort, slowly teaches them to suppress their power. Their insights get buried under politeness. Their intuition gets ignored so others can stay comfortable. Their truth gets softened so it won't shake things up. Over time, this builds frustration. INFJs may start to feel like they're not being heard, but they also realize they haven't really spoken. Or they feel like they're being taken for granted, but they've never set a clear boundary. And the cycle continues. Keep the peace, feel unseen, stay quiet. In group settings, this pattern is especially strong. If the INFJ senses that their opinion will cause conflict, they hold it in. If a team is moving in the wrong direction, they might hesitate to speak up. And yet, the whole time, they see clearly what's happening. But their need to protect the group harmony overrules their inner voice. In relationships, this shows up as self-sacrifice. The INFJ will avoid hard conversations, take on more than they should, or let things slide just to avoid hurting someone. But underneath, resentment grows. They feel disconnected, not because they don't care, but because they care so much that they've given up space for themselves. The desire for harmony is a gift, but when it becomes more important than truth, it turns into silence. INFJs need to understand that true peace doesn't mean avoiding all conflict. Sometimes, peace comes after honesty, after standing up, after saying the hard thing. When INFJs learn that they can speak up without causing harm, when they see that truth can be kind and firm at the same time, they begin to balance their empathy with their power. And that balance is where their voice truly begins to matter. Reason number 5, sensitivity to criticism. INFJs feel things deeply, including the words and opinions of others. They don't just hear feedback, they absorb it. A single comment can stay with them for days, replaying in their mind long after the moment has passed. Because of this, they become extremely cautious about what they say and how they act. They don't want to be misunderstood. They don't want to be seen as wrong. So to avoid criticism, they start hiding the parts of themselves that feel risky to show. This sensitivity can be traced back to their natural wiring. INFJs think about consequences before they speak. They plan for reactions. They consider how their words will be received. But instead of giving them confidence, this awareness often makes them freeze. They stay quiet not because they have nothing to say, but because they fear saying it wrong. This fear is especially strong when it comes to their gifts. Their intuition, their opinions, their creative ideas, these things feel personal. They're not just thoughts. They're part of who they are. So if someone criticizes those things, it feels like a rejection of the INFJ as a person, not just an idea. That fear of rejection leads them to second-guess everything. They ask themselves, will this sound smart enough? What if I offend someone? What if I get this wrong and everyone thinks I'm foolish? These questions don't push them forward, they hold them back. They rewrite messages. They rehearse conversations. And often, they say nothing at all. Over time, this habit becomes normal. The INFJ stops trying to share new ideas, stops writing that book, stops starting that conversation, not because they lack talent or insight, but because they've been hurt before, or because they imagine they will be. In reality, most people respect authenticity. They connect with vulnerability. But INFJs have often been around people who didn't value depth, who called them too serious or too emotional. And now, they live with the echo of those voices, even if the people themselves are long gone. To reclaim their voice, INFJs have to let go of the idea that they can avoid all criticism. It's not possible. Even the most thoughtful message will upset someone, but that doesn't mean it wasn't worth saying. Their thoughts matter. Their words matter. And the people who need to hear them won't judge. They'll understand. When INFJs accept that being real is more powerful than being safe, they start to step into their true role, not just as quiet observers, but as leaders, healers, and change makers. The fear doesn't disappear, but it stops being the one in control. Reason number 6, internal conflict. INFJs live with a lot going on inside. While they may seem calm or quiet on the outside, their inner world is always moving. They are thinkers and feelers, dreamers and realists. And sometimes these different parts of themselves clash. This inner conflict can be one of the biggest reasons they hold back their superpowers. At the core of this tension is a desire to live authentically, true to their values, dreams, and purpose. But at the same time, INFJs also feel pressure to fit into the expectations of the world around them. They may feel pulled between being who they are and being who others need them to be. This creates confusion. Do I speak my truth or stay quiet? Do I follow my vision or follow the rules? Because INFJs are so thoughtful, they don't make choices quickly. They weigh every side. They imagine outcomes. They analyze both their logic and their emotions. This can lead to long periods of hesitation. They don't want to act before they're ready. But in that space of waiting, doubt can grow. They might think, what if I'm wrong? Or what if I'm too much? Or what if I disappoint someone? These questions don't always have clear answers, so instead of choosing, they freeze. They push their intuition down. They ignore their ideas. They stay in roles or relationships that no longer fit, simply because they don't want to cause disruption. This conflict is especially strong when their vision doesn't match reality. INFJs often see how things could be, more fair, more creative, more honest. But the world doesn't always work that way. That gap between what they know is possible and what they actually see can be painful. Instead of challenging it, they sometimes shrink themselves to survive it. But their inner world doesn't go away. It waits. And when INFJs begin to resolve that conflict, when they choose to align their outer life with their inner truth, the change is powerful. They stop hiding. They stop second-guessing. They start using their gifts not just in their thoughts, but in the world around them. That's when they truly begin to lead, not through force, but through clarity. Their presence becomes steady. Their voice becomes strong. And the conflict that once held them back becomes the fire that drives them forward. INFJs were never meant to stay small. Their insight, empathy, and deep understanding of the world are rare, but too often they push those gifts down. Not because they want to, but because life has taught them to. Through fear, pressure, pain, and doubt, they've learned to hide the very things that make them powerful. This video explored the 6 reasons why that happens. Fear of being misunderstood, overwhelming empathy, perfectionism, a desire for harmony, fear of criticism, and deep internal conflict. Each one is real. Each one makes sense. But none of them have to be permanent. The first step is awareness. Once INFJs recognize what's holding them back, they can begin to shift. They can start letting their voice be heard. They can stop shrinking to fit in. They can stop asking for permission to be who they already are. There is strength in their softness. There is leadership in their silence. There is wisdom in their waiting. But there also comes a time to step forward, to share, to create, to guide. The world doesn't just need INFJs to be kind, It needs them to be strong, to be visible, to be fully themselves. When that happens, something incredible shifts. Because an INFJ who embraces their full power is not just rare, they're unstoppable.